a bit curious of what are the expectations in joining this. One of you working as coaches or interested in mapping your development?
Yes, I do. I'm a mapping practitioner as well. And it's interesting to see strategy for cells because typically strategies for organizations, maybe group of people getting to get a goal as a unit. So I'm very keen to know strategy for cell. Yeah. Looking forward to it, Philip.
Oh, any other thought before we start?
Yeah, I'm really interested in using maps to help people to, model their career or to enhance their, find their purpose in a company and how to connect also with the strategy of the company and how that maps to your strategy to, uh, yeah, getting better.
Sounds good. Sounds good. We'll cover that.
Curious and
Okay.
learning.
That's
I'm
good.
just curious and learning.
Very good. Very good. As I was saying, please have a piece of paper because I will encourage you to map along and see what you're learning from this. Because it's not telling you something special. It's only allowing you to say something for yourself. So let's get started and set a bit of context of my history and how I came to it. I've been working in digital since 1995 professionally and a bit before internships and so on. Done some engineering, been in change strategy, and very much into the lean agile world for quite a while now. And I operated a change of career around 2017, becoming a professional coach. And the idea was to adopt a different stance, really working with clients and helping them develop the competencies as they were developing their solutions. And so I qualified as a professional coach. And now I'm also working with the ICF, so the International Coaching Federation in thought leadership. But obviously, we're on a mapping conference, so you may prefer seeing my curriculum, my CV like that. And that's actually what triggered this research of mine when I thought, oh, I'm going to map my CV and I put it online. And a lot of people were interested about it, especially because Simon retweeted it. So it got a lot of visibility. But then it made me think if we take a bit of a step back, it made me, I'm sorry, get your canvases ready. Why not looking at doing strategy for self with that? And as a professional coach, one thing you realize is that the biggest challenge is setting the contractual relationship. I don't mean a commercial relationship, a contract where the coachee is going to work on their development and finding what is their edges, finding the challenges they are facing and articulating it in the way they understand is really the difficulty. Once you get that, the coaching is easy after that. But if you get that wrong, it's very difficult to meaningfully coach somebody. So setting up the right agenda and doing this is very much about helping the awareness and helping reframing the context for people. And when you think about that, and that's how I came to it, is that's what maps do. They are really helping you to see a situational context and actually get better awareness of that context so you can act differently. And therefore, I came to this conclusion, use maps and coaching, and it is strategy for self. Whether it's for career, whether it's for professional development and so on, you can make a strategy for self and you can use a strategy tool as part of the coaching process to do that. So I welcome some people actually worked with me on the initial experiment of it. And I've worked with a few people doing that. And it did set something different. You know, people where we were discussing what they were considering, their consideration, their problem, where they wanted to aim. And we put it on the map. And actually, something emerged from that. Every single time, there was something that came out that was serendipitous that nobody was expecting. So it is worthwhile, and it is not just about a theory. It is something that has had early experimentation as well.
Philip,
Yes,
may I ask you a question regarding when you started initially? Mapping is still novel to a lot of people, and that too, you are coaching those people with a particular purpose. For example, the goal that the agenda that you mentioned. Now, how difficult was it to mix these two things? And I presume that they didn't know how to map or at least read a map. So, how did you navigate that situation of your initial customers, like initial maybe
question.
people? Yeah.
I didn't ask them to map. And today I'm asking you to map along. But I worked with some people where the coaching, I'm mapping whilst I'm coaching, which requires a level of dexterity with it. But I'm writing the map and I'm asking with very basic concept, almost by stealth, asking where they would position some things. And then they get to read the map very easily, because a map is actually not that hard to read once you get the basic concept. It's much harder to produce. And strictly speaking, it's not that hard to do. But getting your head around the language, the granularity, laying things on, and so on, it's not that trivial. But if you do it for them, they can read very easily. And what Simon was presenting earlier, and I've been in one of those research studies, and I'm doing that with clients as well around strategy. You can go and teach people about maps, and it's really a difficult thing to get around. Or you can let them talk about strategy, let them talk about self, map it, and explain to them the core principles. And then they get it, they read it. And after reading it a bit, they get very familiar with it. Yes, I hope that answers your
Thank
question.
you for that answer. That's really powerful one because that offloaded a lot of things from them. And when they saw the map, it was like, wow, this is my current situation. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And you can achieve that really within a couple of sessions, they get it. They wouldn't be able to probably map for themselves. So just, you're familiar with Wardley Map, and the idea of coaching with Wardley Map is a bit novel. And that space has a meaning on the map. You got the chain of visibility, which is not necessarily that important, but it's good to understand how things stack up, because it allows you to read the map more easily. And what really matters is the maturity evolution and where things are at. And when people are thinking about their career, they need to figure, so what is new to the left of the map, and how they're going to consolidate it to the right. And sometimes their experience that has consolidated to the right, is it still valid? Is it still serving the needs? Or actually, do they need to re-challenge that? And sometimes you see there's a gap between the two, which means that you need to challenge yourself as an individual, because there's a new diffusion curve here. You need to reparameterize, if you say, everything that you know about, all your experience. So if we take a first view, just to tell a bit more about a map, and now it gets into archetypes too. If you think of a map, Genesis end is emergent innovation. The custom build is, in a way, you make what you sell. So when you talk about your personal skills, you're going to acquire the skills as you go along. If you talk about a product, is you're selling what you make. So personal skills, you're going to advertise yourself on your CV with those skills, and people will get you for those skills. And of course, then it's competing and scaling in a market where many people will have those skills, and you need to be either differentiated or have more experience than others have. Now, this also overlays with agility and complexity thinking towards probably the left end of the map, more lean flow, alignment, improvement type thinking and capabilities in the middle of the map, and the ability to simplify, harden, and sometimes organization outsource it on the right. And it's also interesting to have that concept of pioneer, settler, stand planner, with the pioneer as archetypes of the kind of people and the sort of I don't like the word mindset, but that's the idea of who is it at the left of the map. The left of the map pioneers are very much people that enjoy turning into the morning, not knowing that what they're going to work on. These people that thrives into creating their work, they are creative in a way. And not everybody is like that. Some people like to be a lot more knowing what they're going to work on. That end is the pioneers in the middle of the settlers. And that is where lean thinking and so on applies, is how do we get something and really productionize it? How do we get something that, or productize in that case, how we get something that becomes repeatable and that has a standard of quality, a standard of outcomes that it can generate over and over again. And of course, the town planner at the other end are the ones that are going to fine tune all the last few details of everything. And it's important to realize that you may feel more comfortable at one end of it, you may feel more comfortable at the other. And where it's interesting to explore as well is sometimes you may have the the ambition to become the next Elon Musk, but where do you need to be for being that? And if your skills, your experience, your inklings are more to the right of the map, or you're going to play so well into innovation. And it's also understanding and recognizing your strengths there. So how do your skills and competency align to your ambitions? And how can you go strategically about it? So I'm going to run quickly through an example, and then I'll run through another example where we construct one step at a time, and I'll ask you to start drafting your own things at the same time. So if you think, first of all, you're starting with a client, or it could be your employer. It is whoever you actually serving. And I don't mean in the sense of serving like you would be a waiter or something like that, but whose needs are you addressing? Whose needs are you supporting? And that's always at the top of the map. You start with whose needs are you addressing? So here, let's say a B2B client, and then you look at what are they looking for? What are their needs? Grow revenue, reducing costs, for instance. And this it's a standard map we're doing. And then we go further in the map where we look at the value chains. And maybe they want to stabilize their operations and scale and lead. Maybe that the cloud is a solution. Then you can go further into DevOps and eliminating waste. And similarly, you may look at freeing up capacity and having some marketing to grow the market share. So if you think on all these, and whether it's a good map or not, but if you think about that map, then you're going to think, okay, where do you fit? Where do you fit? Where are you going to help into that value chain? And I find it quite useful to think about it as, how do you position yourself into the value chain, lower down? How are you going to serve that value chain, support that value chain? So you end up mapping yourself there. And the interesting thing is also to look at what needs have they got to change? What needs have they got to create movement? And for you, similarly, where do you play out? Do you play out on that innovation end, or do you play out on the industrialization end? And it's very difficult when you're looking at your personal brand to play on both ends of the. You need to actually have a brand people need to understand. Are you going to industrialize this, or are you going to be that creative genius there? They're not necessarily the same people buying. They're not the same people you're talking to. They don't talk the same language. So you got to make choices too. So let's have a look at doing the same for yourself step by step by sketching your maps. And as I have here on the screen, every map is starting like this. People tell me always, what tool do you use and so on? And my cheeky answer is a pen and paper. And that's where I'm most creative. And there's absolutely no shame in doing it that way. So think about who is your client, your employer, whose need are you addressing in your day-to-day work? Or if you're thinking about a change of career, whose needs are you looking to address? Who is that target archetype or clone that you have in mind? And sometimes, you know what? You're gonna do multiple maps. Maybe you're gonna say, "Oh, that's who I'm thinking about," but they may apply in different contexts. So you do different maps for those concepts, and you look at all those maps similar. Are they different? So the first thing on the map always, whose needs are you here to support? You got that, or you got at least a starting point with it? Yeah. So the next one, and it can be your employer, your boss, or whoever. Then it's what all they need. And as David said earlier, keep it simple. Think about what all they need, and maybe start with two of them, no more. Typically, if you have 4 or 5, any more than that, start getting a map very detailed. So start simple, couple of needs, and whatever we're drafting right now, you can actually go back to it and elaborate it further. So here, for instance, for my type of clients, if I chose a corporate bank, what do they need? They may need to reboot their transformation programs that have hit the ceiling, and they may have a need to deliver better. But if I was an engineer, it could be different. Maybe they need to deliver new capabilities, and I need to provide help for that. And they may need to reduce technical debt as well. But I'm not an engineer, so I go back to rebooting transformation and delivering better. So what supports those needs? And that's where you're thinking, and the typical mistakes in map is we tend to think in terms of process. So rebooting transformation, what supports the need? Or they need to redesign the transformation and they need to deliver the transformation. So we tend to think into linear processes like this. And it is not how map function. Maps function by thinking what are the elements, what are the skills. So the components can be anything. It can be a skill, it can be a technical tool, it can be a system, whatever that is. So you need to think for those user needs, what is the next level that needs to happen? In my case here, for instance, I would say what support the needs of rebooting transformation? It's probably addressing some systemic challenges. And by systemic challenges, I mean challenges of the organization that they are not managing to shift. And rebooting transformation, as well as delivering better, probably need to have an operational excellence focus. Because, of course, if you want to deliver better, you need to have some excellence. But actually, if you need to reboot transformation and you don't have excellence, you're likely to be firefighting a lot and have very little headroom for transformation. So having excellence is also a way to free up, and therefore it supports rebooting transformation. Interestingly, having excellence might be also something that transformation needs to have with it. And therefore there's a linkage here. So I hope that as I'm explaining things, you're finding some ideas as well for yourself around you got your user now, you got immediate needs. And then what is the first few things that will support those needs? And then we just iterate on that a few times, looking at what supports the needs. So here, for instance, I'm looking, and here we're doing classic map and nothing special yet. We're just doing classic map of your user, their situation, and their value chains underneath. So here, if I look at it, addressing systemic challenges, it's probably something to do with leadership and something to do with alignment and organization design, addressing the operational excellence. Maybe there's something about visualizing the quality and something about engineering and DevOps. And then I iterate again. So what supports the need? And you go in chains like that. And here, maybe in leadership, we need to have more conscious leaders. We need to have teamwork autonomy to address the systemic challenges, and that's supported by leadership. We need to have some flow and considerations for flow to align the organization. And maybe we need to have a culture of continuous improvement. Are you getting there with your ideas as well, your own map? And for now, it's not your own map, it's just a map of your users. So that's where we're going to start now creating your own map. It's understanding where are you plugging in? And maybe you have more levels to go to. And I encourage you to revisit it in your own time, with more time, especially. So you look at where would I plug in? And in my case, as a change agent or a change coach, I need to probably plug into more conscious leaders. I need to plug into teamwork autonomy, probably need to support flow. And there may be a need also on the culture of continuous improvement if it's a main bottleneck of what I'm trying to achieve for my users. But I dotted the line here because I'm not an engineer. So how far I'm very familiar with engineering consideration, but I'm not an engineer. So how far do I really support engineering and DevOps? And am I congruent if I start supporting everything as well? Okay. So are you getting somewhere with your maps? With that maps and finding where you plug in? Yeah.
I've got a question for you. Some elements are part of continuous improvement. Where do you put them? You update your marketing, you update your quality, you update your sales. Where can I put those? Because there are all over the board. When you start a company, you need sales, you need your organizational design, and this still goes on when you're selling commodities.
Indeed. And that's where there is no black and white answer. It's the art of mapping. And to be honest, it's not just mapping. In general, in strategy, one critical element is finding out at what granularity are you going to represent things. And when I show maps like that, there's been a level of curation behind it around the granularity level. And as you map, and that's why I say it's pen and paper, and a lot of paper goes to the bin, is because there's a number of iterations that happen that is just trying to find the relevant granularity. Because if it goes too wild, then your map is very overloaded and it's difficult to handle it. If it's too high level, it doesn't tell you very much. So it's only trial and error that will give you a sense of what is the right granularity here.
Okay.
And with experience, you get it. With experience, almost in the first shot, you actually get the granularity. But at first, that's one of there's a few things at first that are difficult when you start mapping. One is you need to try and remove your own bias. And I always say the map has to surprise you. So you need to map as free as possible from biases, which is very difficult to do when you do it for yourself or by yourself. And you can remove biases very easily when you do it as a team in a corporate setup or enterprise setup. And that's where I always say, the map is not something that two people or one person does for the rest and present. It's actually a collective process as much as possible because it will address biases. But if you do map for yourself, indeed, bias is happening. If you do it with a coach, that helps you because the coach will guide you. But if you do it for yourself, you try and be as fresh to the map. You let the map speak to you rather than trying to make the map say what you want. It's tricky. The other one is, as I said earlier, really thinking in terms of what supports that and then what supports that. And in that order, because it's very easy to flip and think in terms of processes and look at doing a process map in a Wardley map, and it just doesn't work. So you really need to look at that. And then it's finding the granularity, which has a level of trial and error. Okay.
Thank you.
For me, this is telling me where I'm pitching myself is pretty much at the emerging end and custom end. What I'm offering to people is generally more of a nature of tailorization. I'm not able to necessarily here do a product. I don't have a ready sort of process, a ready training, a ready anything to get to somebody with, because their needs are going to be so contextual and so specific. And a lot of it is emerging. So that's the map speaking to me already. Now, being at the Genesis custom end has some implications. I'm going to be inventing some solutions. I'm going to use really early concepts, things that are emerging in the market, and put them in practice. I'm going to have to work things out on the fly. I need to find clients and businesses that are more at the innovation end. It means if I go and pitch myself to laggards, they're very unlikely to take my services. I'm going to have to experiment continuously, tailoring what I do with clients. I need to go for impact, and I need to consider in what I'm doing, what can I actually productionize so I can scale it. So already giving me some indicators based on where I was positioned, what strategies do I need to follow for myself? Okay. On the other hand, if I was more at the product end and so on, I would probably look to become an expert in some industry framework that are relevant in that space. I would look to train and certify in them. I would work with mainstream demand of clients. I don't have to sell them on the concept. They just know what they want. I just need to supply that. I would probably go through mainstream channels and look for volume. I would need to keep a lookout for the risk of obsolescence and new trends emerging. And I need to know as well that their rates will go down as commoditization takes toll. So get ready for pivots, or actually get some good relationships to maintain and defend the day rates. So you see how already the positioning tells me what I should consider for my own strategy. Now, quick checkpoint. In what you've been just doing for half an hour now, what are you learning about your alignment to your user?
Thank you.
What are you learning about your own strategies?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I should have sprung to mind before, but my line of business is more in the mature companies and small companies than in innovators. And I'm more often with small innovative companies than with mature companies, which disaligns my income. Yeah.
So
Makes
I've
sense.
explained it for you.
I had a meeting this morning with a company like that. So
Good. And that's where, you understand your landscape better. And
Yeah.
then it's what strategies can you do within it. Good.
also with personal coaching on a personal level. So yeah, it's very useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Other thoughts?
We can have multiple maps of ourselves, covering multiple aspects of ourselves. But in the same way, can we have multiple coaches look at those maps and we get different opinions, like we get from doctors, maybe? Like we get a second opinion? What are your thoughts as a coach?
That's an interesting question. As a coach, I always think, as a coach also, I tend to define myself more as a performance coaching. And if you think, and it's different in the US, people perceive coaching as something really positive. In Europe, coaching is sometimes understood as we're going to fix people. and something rather negative. But if you think an athletes, people that win Olympic games and so on, they don't tend to have just one coach. People that are of world scene athletes or sports people, they value the opinion of a number of people. And then they probably make up their mind, and they will have people, they learn to see people that help them. Another thing that I recognize in coaching is, and that's a difference to consulting, very often execs like somebody that tells them what they like to hear. And consultants often will make very good money on that. The difficulty as a coach is you need to be challenging, and people are not necessarily very comfortable with it. But when they learn how to be comfortable because they understand those challenges are helping me basically challenge my own opinion, my own perception of things, which give me more options to see. When they understand that, they would want to have several people. They would want that diversity that's going to rip apart whatever they do, because it will harden and solidify and improve and bring serendipity. And serendipity to harden and so on. You look at experts. For serendipity, you never know where it's going to come from. And when you're into creativity and innovation, you need to stimulate random thoughts, outliers. And maybe for 10 times, it's not going to be worthwhile. But at one time, it's going to make a big difference. And that's the answer is many coaches. And the more you can have with the time you have available, the better sometimes, yes.
And with AI, all that wave, people trying to clone themselves into machines to offload their human work, probably, maybe repetitive, or as you say, things would evolve. So there could be certain playbooks that AI can run, and you don't have to be there all the time. You will only be there when you are really needed. What do you think about that?
I'm not sure we have enough time to cover that properly because I might go on a rant.
Okay.
Uh, Personally, I really struggle with AI. 'Cause I appreciate in the repetitive space, yes, as long as it got its learning from the good places in the repetitive. But I'm really struggling to ever move myself into the repetitive space. So I really don't see how AI can be in that creative space. And I'm talking on problem solving, of innovation, and so on. In my line of work, I'm about looking to bring the solutions and the ideas, not necessarily bringing the solution, but bringing the idea. So stimulating the idea from a group, a team that we haven't been able to thought about before. And maybe it was always there, but the voice never came out. And as a coach, you're here to stimulate. So all my work is that. So AI doesn't do that. AI normalizes it to the average voice coming out. And I'm always looking for the one that isn't. So that's why I don't think AI is very ready, or I'm not sure it will ever be for that. Sorry, we need to crack on, but that's a longer answer. I'm happy to talk about it at length.
Thank you.
So going on, pivoting your map to a map of personal development, a bit like the map that I'm presenting here. And if you remember where we left it, you were at the bottom of the map there. And for me, I'm change agent coach, conscious leader, teamwork autonomy, flow, and cultural continuous improvement. And now I'm starting my map with it, which is a little bit of a cannibalization, because you shouldn't start a map with yourself. But you understand that we've gone through the process to see where we were at into the map. And now I'm going to look at, okay, if I'm here to bring this into organization, what am I going to rely on? What are more value chains that are going to support this? So if I look at conscious leader, teamwork, autonomy, flow, culture of continuous improvement, what's next in that? And I encourage you to pivot your map. What was at the bottom, put it at the top now, and look at what's supporting this, just like a normal map. So we need to be able to articulate the change. I need to be able to articulate the change. I need to be able to coach people to systemic leadership. So being leaders of a system, being leaders of teams, and enabling teams to function well. I also need to be able for team autonomy and flow to get the team to take that collaborative view of working as a team. So the team and system coaching is important. I need to be able to facilitate, and maybe because it's a big bottleneck, I need some form of operating model for excellence. And looking into excellence, Kaizen as element of facilitation, element of collaboration that are very interesting. So by pivoting the map, now I'm looking at what is actually supporting that and how as a professional, I need to support those needs to enter the scene of my client with that. And then I go further on. So what are the tools, what are the practices, the frameworks that exist out there to support it? So for excellence and Kaizen, Lean and Toyota Production System are there. For the facilitation of flow, there's the flow system that has a lot of roots in Lean, TPS, Agile, and complexity. For team coaching, I qualified as a coach in ORSC, which is Organizational Relationship System Coaching. And of course, facilitating the change articulation, Wardley maps are pretty good at that because they marry that strategy for change with facilitation element. And you could go multiple layers if you wanted. I'll take a bit of a shortcut here. And equally, I'm thinking, so it's at the customer end. A lot of it is at the customer end. All people asking for it. All my clients and the people I'm supporting, all they're asking, I want some flow system, I want some Wardley map. And not so much. They're asking for strategy, something different in strategy. They will be asking for a new view of the delivery, a new view of the value or the value flows in there. They will not have necessarily connected with those core frameworks. And things like Kinevin, for instance, language is difficult. And they may not have the time to research it. So what my map also has evolved to be is thinking, how do I need to intermediate most of those things for the needs of my client? So they may need something around digital strategy, and I would use Wardley Maps for that. They may need something about applying flow, and I will use the flow system for that. They may need something about strategy alignment, and Wardley Maps are good as well for that. They may need something about digital leadership, and ORSC is good for that. So there's suddenly I'm connecting the dots. I'm seeing that there is actually a gap in the market between those core frameworks and the needs of the client, and connecting the clients to those core framework, there is scope in there. So I'm identifying there's a layer of intermediation that can be done. You following me? And I'm talking for what I do. This is telling me I need to position on that. This is where I integrate into the client's value chain. Those are what they're expressing as needs in their value chains. And sometimes I may need to articulate, help them understand that it's what they need lower in their value chain from the first map. And I need to position on this. I also need to build expertise on that. I need to train, I need to qualify, I need to explore, I need to connect, build relationship with those people. And I need to create intermediary services for that. And really, what I would bring to my client is those services. Okay. So that was my awareness. What is your awareness? And how can you strategically take your personal development using math? So it's ambitious to do that in an hour, but I'm curious to hear from you through that process, through those very early sketches you did. Is there one thing coming out?
Partnerships for me.
Thank you.
But
Uh,
go ahead.
Sorry, in my case, I'm not a consultant. This is my day-to-day work. So it's what is showing up is what I'm dedicating more time is not what is on the map. So it's the lack of focus on the things that I'm considering important.
Thank you.
So my reflection is more on the intermediate services, and I think that's also where I am now. I've just stepped into my independent consulting career. Yeah, I'm considered as a domain-driven design. You can call it that kind of a framework. So people ask you to do gigs, like facilitate an event storming workshop, or even do Wardley mapping as an extension. But if I really think about it, I'm not my dream about myself is not to do gigs and to be feeling good about being a D expert, but it's to actually to do what you have the blue circle on, the position on helping organizations to make a strategic transition to achieve what's important for them. But so I have to start some sort of in the right hand, bottom right hand to go with it because I've just started. But somehow, I think if I use Wordly Map to chart my career development, it will be from the right hand side somehow to then to the left hand side through some intermediate services and try to identify some opportunities and then try to optimize or maximize my influence so I can do the left hands. But it's very intriguing for me to how I have actually tried to map using Wordly Map. I didn't get anywhere because it's like a split personality, like on the starting from the product side and not the commodity, but product side. But I want to really influence on the left side, and it's like the opposite direction. I was just like, oh, holy crap, it's I'm on the wrong track, so I stopped. But this has been really interesting to see how your example framed the whole value chain and the evolution of it.
Thank you. Thank you. And that is real data. This is something as a professional I've done, and I revisited as well what I did in 2018, like this, and what I'm doing now, and seeing the difference. And on my CV, initially, I didn't want to be a trainer, but I realized that the things I need to train to achieve the overall goal. And I swapped the idea. I was closer to being a consultant and a coach. And now it's more consultant training, coach and training. And the consulting element is more, I'm trying to bring it more. So it's worthwhile doing it and then revisiting it through your journey because you will evolve. It will evolve. One thing I would advise is if you start on the right, it's very difficult to get to the left of the map because you will get quite swallowed and get your clients and build your networks with the people that want that sort of thing until that becomes a commodity. And jumping to the left, you're not going to have contact with the more innovation people and all that. And it's easier if you get the people to the left and ride the journey with them as it becomes more mainstream. But of course, you need to pick your cards because you can also go to the left with things that will never take off. Those are considerations for your personal strategy. But I'm really pleased that all of you seem to, in 45 minutes of doing that, one little thing came out. That's what worthwhile. And doing the process with people when we do proper maps, it takes about 2-3 sessions to get to a map. But the same serendipity has happened for every single time. And of course, you would look to do probably 10 maps. So I really encourage you to carry on and have further tries for yourself and dig into it. And believe me, maps is very difficult to start with, but it's not that complicated. Keep trying. Practice will get you there, and then you'll be able to knock them up in no time at all.
Luke, can I ask a question?
Of course.
So I really struggled with the bit where we were flipping the map from the user downwards to then me at the top of the map, because I struggled to know, I guess I struggled to put a label to the role that I'm mapping for myself. How do you unpick that to say, oh, this is a coach role, that's a consultant role, that's in
I don't particularly put a label on the role.
Okay.
I really go straight from that's where I'm looking to play. It's the first map,
Yeah. It's the bottom of that first map.
not path.
Yeah.
And if you look where the components of conscious leader, teamwork, autonomy, flow, and culture of continual improvement have blended in terms of maturity, I position them exactly in the same place.
Okay.
So it's, and the map is change code, but it could be me on the map. It
Yeah,
doesn't
okay.
matter. And I just repeat exactly those things. And then I look at what's supporting that, what's supporting that, what's supporting that, and build from there to get to core sort of trainings, or maybe there's nothing supporting it in the market. So is that an opportunity? And then when you look at those core trainings in the market, do they give any of them good an entire solution? Not necessarily. And are they digestible by a layman leader that is going to make decisions? Not always. So how can I intermediate that? One thing, and I gave a talk last year on it, I like doing in maps, is trying to see gaps. And you can look it up on YouTube. There's a talk called Mind the Gaps and Spot Your Strategic Plays. So I always look at, the map tells you generally the rooms of the known, but the rooms of the unknown is exploring, is there a gap in my map? Can we intermediate better? Is there an empty space? What should be happening in that space? So looking for holes and gaps in maps.
Brilliant.
Does that answer?
Really helpful. Thank you. That's really helpful.
Cheers. I think we're near time. There's 3 minutes left. Have you got a last question, maybe? Let me review it.
No, it's been really great. I look forward to complete my maps.
So I really encourage you to try, and by all means, connect with me on LinkedIn, tag your maps. I'll be really curious to see what you're coming up with and what you're learning. And also, this is an experiment. This is some application I put together. It doesn't mean I'm right. So if you find along the way better ways and so on, please share with me. I'd love to know.
Okay.
Will
Thank
do.
you, Philippe.
Thank you very much
Yeah,
for your
thank you
time.
so much.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you, Philippe. It was amazing to learn from you today.
Thank you.